morning, good afternoon, my friends. My name is Gosha. Hello to everybody joining us here in the Cosmic Agency video number 5. Number 5 in the Federation series. This video arose unexpectedly and developed itself unexpectedly just based on one question that I made for Yazhi at the time. It was around 1 month ago, and as I was discussing with her this whole concept, how the Federation perceives Earth, how the interests of those people from 5D outside Earth differ, and how the will of the 5D people, let's call them this way, is more important to the Federation than the 3D will of the people here. So I was asking her, okay, well, how about all these ET races who are involved in all these liberation tasks and operations? We hear about them everywhere, and what are they fighting for, and what are they really doing and liberating the Earth from? If, from what you said, the 5D people's free will is the one that the Federation respects more. So I was asking, that fact of them respecting the 5D people will more, where is it coming from? From the lower level of the Federation or from the higher, top level of the Federation? Because maybe the lower level Federation, all these Alphatans and, Antarians fighting for some sort of liberation, they still must be considering the 3D free will of Earth. So that didn't add up for me, and I wanted to explore more that question, and that's how this video came about. This is how it started. So this question will be answered in this video. Please watch till the end again so you can understand all the little nuances of the topic. In this video, it will be explained how the reality on Earth does not match and does not correspond with the reality outside Earth, because as everything here is so drastically manipulated on all levels, especially the topics related to the awakening, ETs and all that. So what we here have as facts, as truths and as understandings about the federations and space travel and ET races, it doesn't reflect the objective reality as it's happening out there, because it is done on purpose. So here all this level of manipulations will be explained as well. And it will be explained how the mainstream creates the reality and the perception of the reality, and then also the so-called alternative mainstream creates another level of human collective perception. Because yes, within the alternative media, within our UFO communities, etc., there is a mainstream current, and then there is another alternative to the alternative media stream. So you'll see here how this all relates out and how this continues to be controlled even within the so-called alternative media. You'll also see how and why the reality that we perceive here and the reality perceived from the ET's perspective is so different, and how actually there is a special common area. There are some special common areas between our reality, how we perceive the reality, and between how they perceive the reality, and it is from that common circle area there are some of these liberating fights happening, because some of these Antarians and Centauris understand the evil as we understand the evil. There is some overlapping there of understanding. But then, apart from that, you'll see that there is a huge gap between how they perceive what's going on Earth and how we perceive what's going on Earth. So that's why our interests do not overlap, do not match, and do not correspond. So that's why the Federation will never really act according to the real interests of the people within the 3D, because there is just no overlapping zone in the interest area. Anyway, you'll see it in the video. And in the end of the video, towards the end of the video, you'll see what the Federation and all these low-level Federation officers putting their lives at risk, so to speak, what they are protecting the Earth from, really, because something I didn't know myself, there are all kinds of invading space races who, according to Yazhi, are not really evil as such, just opportunistic, and they are just waiting for their chance to get hold of this planet and take control, and the Federation is protecting their playground from that. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with the video. There are no final comments in the end. Watch the video till the end, and then I'm going to see you in the next video. I'm going to see you for the live recap of some of our recent Federation videos. So thank you very much for watching. Enjoy it. Bye.
Seeing the 3D people and their free will as avatars in the game and valuing 5D will more, is that how lower or higher level of Federation view it? 'Cause if the lower Federation officers still go and fight for the liberation, it means they don't necessarily view humans this way, as game avatars only. So, who in the Federation views Earth this way exactly? Federation leaders on top, I suppose, yes? Okay, the answer is contained in what I'm going to explain. First, take into account what we have explained before, how reality is based on perception, and perception is based on agreements, and agreements on information, and information on frequency. So the complex matrix of information perception that makes up humankind's collective unconscious will dictate how reality will be seen for the people included in it. And they are included in it because they have agreements of perception based on their frequency of thought. So, humanity has been fed precisely engineered and controlled information for a very long time. Thousands of years, actually. But the real bulk of what concerns us here is only from the 15th century to nowadays. And if you want to get even closer, the information that is creating the human unconscious reality matrix would be the one that was imposed as truth to the human population from the 19th century Industrial Revolution, Darwinian times, to nowadays. Getting objectively even closer, what is really creating present-day reality on Earth, what is forming the collective unconscious, is what has been imposed by design onto the human population during the lifetimes of the people who are still alive, and being even more specific, to the post-circa year 2000, so-called millennial generation. That is what is forming the matrix, the set of rules, laws, being legal or of matter and nature, and everything that dictates the formation of agreements that form perception of reality on Earth. That matrix of information is specific to Earth. It is true that there is a lot of cross-influence with other non-terrestrial cultures, as I will mention later. But essentially, as things are exactly, the exact composition of interconnected bits of information that form agreements of perception that in turn form reality as perceived on Earth, is specific of Earth and not found anywhere else. It is true that every culture on any planet would have their own matrix of agreements perception that form their particular flavor of reality. But in the case of Earth, it is especially notorious and different, because it is a contained planet, artificially isolated from the rest of the cosmic community. So the view of reality from Earth is very unique and specific there. So I am explaining here why how things are perceived on Earth does not correspond to a greater, more expanded reality, as you could call everything outside Earth. What is real and not, possible and impossible, as understood on Earth, what terrestrial science, history and technology dictates as real and is then fed as hard truth in an inflexible manner, does not match and does not correspond to how reality and truth is seen from people living outside the information matrix of Earth. So humans will understand one set of truths about any subjects, and it will not match the truth of a more expanded point of view of people living with another set of perception rules and agreements outside Earth. As I said above, as people, souls, travel, incarnating from one planet to another, collecting experiences depending on their frequency of thought existence, they will import, consciously or unconsciously, a wide variety of ideas that also form perception and agreements. That is true. But most inhabitants of Earth have been reincarnating there so many times that they strongly perpetuate the said set of agreements of perception that form Earth's collective unconscious, unique to Earth. Souls that have not incarnated much on Earth, only a few times or only once, the so-called starseeds, will then be the ones who mostly import ideas from other cultures and planets outside Earth, but they are still in a vast minority. So then, we translate this above to concepts about extraterrestrials and how the Federation works. People will form their opinions following people who they perceive more knowledgeable than themselves. People on Earth are not trained to form their own belief systems. They have been trained and conditioned to follow for generations. So the people interested in UFO subjects, researchers and authors, have to base their knowledge on something. Even those few that think for themselves must do that. We all do, ultimately. But on Earth, they will tend to follow what is known before them about this or about any other subject. Especially on this subject matter, because there is so little objective information available to anyone. Then there comes another problem here unique to Earth, or almost. The fact is that, as all information on Earth is heavily controlled, it must be in order to perpetuate the set experiences to be had incarnating there. One aspect that the controllers, be it the Illuminati, secret societies ruling Earth, whoever, need to especially guide and regulate the information is concerning subjects that will make or cause people to start thinking for themselves. Subjects that make people question their reality and its nature. This especially applies to subjects concerning extraterrestrials and cultures outside Earth, because by nature, that kind of information would be especially disruptive for the status quo or for the information as it is supposed to be on Earth. In other words, it would disrupt perception so much, it would end up collapsing all the belief systems on Earth that in turn form the collective unconscious that forms the perception of reality itself as seen on Earth. So I must stress that all the UFO, extraterrestrials, Federation's subject has to be, by its very essence, a heavily controlled subject. So I bluntly say that what people are being fed as truth about extraterrestrials and galactic federations is only a heavily controlled and artificially altered, governmentally controlled, convenient to them, false reality or lie that does not correspond to what is out in space in hard objective reality. All information on Earth that will be presented to the public coming from approved sources is heavily controlled, so it fits into a narrative those controllers, whoever they are, need to keep running on Earth. This includes the MSM, mainstream media, and the popular so-called alternative media as well, because the powers that be, the controllers, create controlled opposition to gain even more control over the perception of the population, as people do not seek any other information outside what they see as credible sources, mainstream media or alternative media. Credible sources, but for their level of awareness. The problem here gets worse when even people within the so-called alternative media unwillingly participate with the disinformation soup, simply because, as I said above, they must base their concepts and belief systems on something as a foundation. Foundation that is heavily controlled by design, as I said. The control mechanism behind mainstream media and mainstream alternative media has many faces and uses many tools to achieve their goals. Some are direct slander and debunking of anyone who dares to oppose them, but this is done in many levels as well. So the mainstream media will debunk and slander the mainstream alternative media, creating a perception of duality and of having to choose sides in the minds of simple people, moving them back into the mainstream media official narrative. But other wiser people will see that both the mainstream media and the mainstream alternative media are controlled by the same people with the narrative and an agenda. So the controllers create another, deeper level of undercover and deeper alternative media to oppose the mainstream alternative media, and then yet again to a deeper level. This with the specific purpose of controlling all levels of consciousness and spiritual awakening of the population. But then, there are a few who are not controlled, or only controlled by the base perception set of rules in the matrix of reality of Earth, but not directly controlled by the governments on purpose. Those are a problem for the status quo. Those go around widely, saying all kinds of outrageous claims and ideas, dangerous for the ones in power at all levels, starting from low-class government officials all the way up to hard Illuminati and even Federation Earth controllers. Those are seen as the supreme troublemakers for the Earth's matrix as such. The system, the matrix on Earth, Cabal, Illuminati, whoever, have different systems to deal with this problem. The first and most obvious one is taking those troublemaker subjects out physically. And they do that a lot when everything else fails. But what they mostly do is swamp the information those troublemakers share in a soup of information contradicting them, or simply immersing their information among so much data that it becomes almost impossible for any normal person to be able to tell what is important and what is not. The subjects simply go into information overload, therefore containing the troublemakers, as their information no longer reaches the public, because it is seen as simply more of the same, not interesting, and also too out there, incredible. This also because people in general like immediate gratification and will go for all those other pieces of data contained in the said soup that are more colorful and impressive, therefore giving them a dopamine shot of instant gratification. Most people are like crows. Showing them something shiny and they will go after it blindly, ignoring everything else. Having said all this, the perception on Earth of good and evil, and of extraterrestrials, federations in space, and how space and reality at large in the universe works, is a self-contained, agreement-based false realm that does not reflect an objective reality as it is seen from outside Earth. So all the concepts of how extraterrestrials should be, how they should look, and how they work does not reflect an objective space reality. It only reflects what and how they were told and programmed on Earth. So those concepts are terrestrial and not shared by the perception agreements of people outside Earth. Concepts such as federations of light coming to save humanity from evildoers only perpetuate and reflect the exact mentality the cabal, the controllers, want people to be in. It shows a direct agenda-edited copy of religion and politics, but adapted to the minds and the expectations of today's society. That is the same political structures, belief systems, and limited science as seen from Earth, but adapted with spaceships. The evil side was before imposed on people as coming from devils, evil spirits, and invading opposing nations and clans, coming to get you and your family. Today, besides that, it is the very same, but replacing the words devil and evil spirits with alien invaders and reptilians. Same structure exactly. Another telltale sign of this for me is that if you research the nature of UFO encounters from 1950s to today, you will see that the interpretation of such encounters reflects the exact mentality of the people of Earth according to each era. In the 1950s and 60s, Extraterrestrials were called spacemen or Martians or similar names, and they came from planets within this same solar system, from Mars, from Venus, from Jupiter, because they reflect the human mentality of that time and the frame of reference the mainstream media was giving them at the time. Even the shape of the spaceships, UFOs, as interpreted by humans during each era, reflects clear design tendencies on Earth and are a reflection of comic books, NASA spacecraft of the day, like Mercury and Gemini capsules, and later Apollo, and even the design of the automobiles of the era can be seen reflected on the descriptions of the UFOs encountered back then. Although, taking into account that nowadays, there is a lot more influence of outside Earth people in the shape of intervention directly into online media and mainly through starseeds. So some things start to reflect a more objective reality as it is outside Earth. Basically, the same principle applies here as well as it did before. So how people interpret UFOs and extraterrestrials and encounters again reflects the nature of the times they live in. No exception here. And that base perception they use to interpret what they see and understand with is heavily controlled by the powers that be on Earth, who dictate what people should know and how. The concept of evil as such, who the perpetrators are, the identity of the perpetrators, from evil spirits to regressive extraterrestrial races, is unique to Earth. It is simply not understood in the same way outside Earth. That concept today includes the former bad guys such as devils and evil spirits, including ruthless overlords and dictators out to invade neighbor countries, all the way to reptilians who eat humans, specifically children, Maitre, evil tall grays, and a large amount of complex ideas and interpretations of evil aliens. So, from Earth, the logical thing is to fight them. In a way known on Earth, that is direct fight, with sword gun and plasma rifle, direct military confrontation. And that mentality is reflected just about everywhere in the accepted UFO community. From outside Earth, those concepts such as evil reptilians and Maitre are seen as local human interpretations of a much more complex reality outside Earth. Now, even though reality as understood on Earth at large does not reflect how reality is understood outside Earth, there is a common area where both worlds, both interpretations of reality coincide. The red area in the circles. This is because, as I have said above, there is a large cross-cultural influence between Earth and other cultures in space, mostly due to the seeding of concepts and of information coming from the starseeds, walkdowns, and other ways, like internet infiltration performed by many star races nowadays. From there, in that common red area, concepts like evil reptilians and evil space races do coincide, because basically those exact concepts were not even developed on Earth but imported there, and then once on Earth distorted into perception-compatible concepts according to each era, like devils and jinns. This compatible zone is where we find that some stellar races with heavy cultural influence with Earth working both ways will still hold some base concepts from where they interpret their reality. So, races such as Alfratans, Centauri, that have their past linked directly to Earth, and their good friends the Antarians as well, will hold concepts like evil reptilians and space invaders. And as each person, group of people, and even race hold a role in the larger reality universal context, humans will play the role of defenseless creatures in victim mode. And one layer above, the Antarians and Alfratans will play the role of liberators or guardians. Just two levels of the same game. But in the case of the lower federation, of which the Antarians and Alfratans are members of, they will follow a set of rules and regulations, not only of the legal kind, but of the perception of reality agreements of their worlds and society. And this would be the part of the circle in white that does not coincide with Earth's concepts of reality. So even though the Alfratans and Antarians, among many others, play the role of liberators, they also follow another set of concepts and agreements that prevent them from acting as humans expect them to act. This means that they will not go into Earth to clean it of the evil cabal and liberate humans and welcome them into the galactic community, because that is outside the frame of interests and expectations of the Federation, and is incompatible with the expectations of the human population. So, the lower Federation's members will follow certain set of protocols and rules and will hardly ever stray from them. This means enforcing the blockade of Earth, preventing starships to go in and out of Earth at will, unless they follow certain strict rules, like doing everything they technologically can to avoid being seen and detected by the human population at large. And will only be on alert should their specific concept of regressive star races appear out of space with the intent of taking over Earth. Because without Federation protection, it would be easy prey. But this is a stellar concept of what an evil race is like, and may even not be seen as evil or regressive at all, only as opposing in interests to what the Federation intends and plans for Earth. So, in order to continue to have Earth under exact specifications, the Federation, as its supreme controllers, is interested in keeping it in. Its agents, Alfratans and Antarians among others, will follow their set of rules that will not be compatible with humans' expectations. Humans want to be liberated from their own concepts of evil, and the Federation wants to keep the humans contained there and with no external direct influence until they can manage their own problem and dissolve humans' specific idea of what evil is. And on Earth, the concept of evil is so extreme and so cruelly harsh that the Federation at large does not want that concept outside Earth, spawning and manifesting all over the galaxy. So the problem is mental and specific of Earth with some external influence, and it is complex. Wow. Okay, so let me clarify only this point, which relates to my original question. The idea that the Federation only respects the wishes of 5D people and not 3D people, is that concept also embraced by those Alphaton pilots, etc.? Or whose concept is that precisely? Yes, because this is part of their frame of reality as they accept it. They understand Earth's concept of evil and they share a lot with it. But they follow their own concepts too, such as knowing that Earth's concepts are specific of Earth and do not apply outside Earth. So even though there may be evil reptilians, for example, for the lower Federation, those are not a problem, as the interpretation of evil reptilians is not the same. They see them as contained on Earth and as the result of the collective manifestation of the people there, part of the game of being human. The way they see that they must protect Earth is from external regressive, by their standards, influence. So people from 5D in 3D Earth can go about their merry little 3D lives, not worrying about real space invaders of the kind humans are simply not aware of, and that are of a nature not specifically evil as such, but only opportunistic, therefore contrary to the interests of 5D people. I think I understand. Thanks for taking your time to explain all this. Who are real space invaders, the kind humans are not aware of? As in people, races, or space-bearing entities that are opportunistic and would want to take control over Earth, as it is in a very vulnerable state by design, but if it were standing alone. But it's not. The Federation is taking care of the playground, Earth. Can be just about any race. All they need to be is to have interests contrary to the local group. Maitres and such? Those are usually, yes, coinciding with some Earth's concepts, but maybe just about any race or subgroup or people of any race. Are there any active at the present moment, trying to take over the Earth? All the time, constantly. Like Malakak making shady agreements with the US government. And what objective would they have to take control of the planet? Some go all the way there, but rarely, especially nowadays as the Federation here is so strong. They are mostly interested in taking advantage of the situation here, looking for and using loopholes with Earth to extract whatever they may want, be it minerals, metals, or food, including humans for food, as the Federation does not see them as real people anyway. Whatever. And so in that sense, Federation is protecting Earth from all those. So in that sense, Federation could be viewed as good towards Earth citizens, since their agenda of Earth control is less evil than of those other races? Yes, that's their main objective. But that does not really coincide with the interests and with the expectations of humans, much less with their real needs as they are suffering, and denying that is plain irresponsible. Game or no game, it is. And that is the core point here we are trying to say. What's evil according to the extraterrestrials? Interests contrary to yours. And pure evil as in self-destructive tendency. That's all. Okay. Maybe the Federation is making deals with all those other races. From an Earth-based opinion, it would look that it may be the case, also seen as if the Federation were infiltrated by negative races. But I insist that those would only be human perception-based concepts, expectations, or speculations to try to explain the unknown. No need to make things more complicated here, looking for overcomplicated reasons. The evidence from here shows that it's all as it has always been, and has always been intended to be from the start. Federation's interests simply do not coincide with human expectations and reasons. From the human perspective and point of view, the problem does come from the Federation itself and from its intentions with Earth. So that's why I said that they are acting in a regressive manner, but from the point of view of human perception only.